Welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. This is Barney Leventino and
Brenda Cherry.
And welcome to the newest chapter of Turn the Page, the Syosset Library podcast. And we're very happy today to welcome Susan Murphy. Susan, we just listened to and enjoyed your very interesting lecture on using DNA research in genealogy. And I know you're a professional genealogist. And my question to start off is, how did your interest in genealogy begin, and what sparked it, and what led you down the road to become a professional at it?
Well, I started when I was 12 years old. Like most of us in grade school have to fill out a chart. Well, nobody knew anything. And my father's father died when he was very young, and the family had migrated a lot and didn't know anything. So I started researching and going to libraries and asking questions. And I do this everywhere I go. I have that notebook that everybody in the family says, please stop taking notes. But I know the stories that nobody else knows. And I've had my siblings call me up and say, what's our mother's maiden name? Which shocks me because I always have trees and charts and DNA, and all they want to know if we're related to Vikings. But so I have this lifelong interest in genealogy, and I wasn't able to do it full time because my background is in business, and I owned my own engineering company, and until I got disabled. And now I'm able to do it a little bit more because of the internet and all these websites that I can do at home and do part-time. That doesn't make up for going on the road and going to repositories, but I think it's really opened up to a lot of people who didn't have access before and who are not able to travel.
Right.
You mentioned during the program that you're involved with the Family History Center in Plainview.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and what maybe resources you would have there that our people could use?
Well, I'm a volunteer every Friday from 10 to 2. It's the Church of Latter-day Saints, and it's on Washington Avenue over here in Plainview. They have the largest genealogy library in the world. Part of the tenets of their religion is that they need to know all their relatives are to baptize them. So they have gone around the world copying records. And we have access to 3 million rolls of microfilm, which they are digitizing. And as a family history library, people can come in there now and look at New York City birth, marriage, and death records and print them there for free, where you used to have to go to the municipal archives or order them from the state health department. So we have volunteers like myself. Most of them are professional genealogists who volunteer to help other people and answer questions. It's funny that most of the volunteers are not Mormons because they do it themselves during their own church services. But we have debates there. We have people coming in all the time asking questions. And I'm always pleased that when I give these lectures that people show up at the library to ask more, who haven't thought of their questions, or they bring their trees, they have brick walls. How do I get past this? What are the techniques I can use? Because there really are no brick walls. You just have not looked in the right place.
We actually have a fairly active, it's a small core of our patrons who are interested in doing genealogy research. We try to update the collection, but knowing that the Family History Center is available is definitely an additional resource that we can point to people to. So we will be sending people over to you.
That's wonderful. We also have a library of books. We do have the Irish Family History Forum's Irish library there, and the German genealogy group has a portion of their library there. The rest they bring out at meetings. But we also have a collection of books of family histories of Long Island families, But the best part are the people who are there, who can talk about it, who can help you based on their own research on how to search. These websites, Ancestry and Family Search, are not easy to search. And there are many techniques to search better. And the information is there. People, every time they search on Ancestry, they're like, oh, they keep giving me as a census. Well, I know that. And they don't know how to get into other areas of the database. So that's what they're for. And for me personally, has really, my research was heavily colonial New York when I started out. And Ireland and Poland. But now I've been able to open up my research around the world, helping other people. And what I have learned is the techniques are all the same. It doesn't matter where you're researching, you use the same strategies to find out what you need.
For people that are just starting out, I was thinking during the course of your lecture, you're talking about using DNA as a research tool. And I suspect that there are a lot of people out there who think, I'm going to do this test, send it in, I'm going to come back, and I'm going to know all of my ancestry right from doing the simple test. For somebody starting out, what do you recommend? Where do they start? How do they get going? And how far along do you need to be before you're ready to start doing DNA testing for genealogy purposes?
Okay, that is which is first, the chicken or the egg? Okay, people come at it from different viewpoints, and as you can tell, we've had this discussion many times in our groups. Well, what should you do first? And it doesn't matter how people get to it. It's what do they do with the information. So people, genealogy is the number one hobby in the world. And it is the number one thing that is searched on the internet after porn. But so many people are interested and they don't know where to start, and they don't have the paper history that I had because my family didn't think they needed to save those things. So when you do, DNA will give you directions. It'll tell you if you're looking in the right place. It'll give you places to start. It will bring up you'll find cousins who know more than you do about different parts of your family, who have documents, who have pictures. I have gotten pictures of relatives I've never seen before. So it doesn't matter how you got here. Once you get there and you start with DNA, you have to do the paper research. And if you've done the paper research and you are stuck, you can use DNA to further out. I call DNA Miracle Grow for your family tree. It just blossoms it in areas that you never anticipated, and it helps you break the walls. Like I have been able to get so much further in my Irish research with DNA, finding cousins who still live in the original thatched cottage in Ireland, which I can't wait to go see. So anybody can come at it from any direction, but you have to use good research techniques and know what you're looking at. That is a lot of what I tried to talk about, is because people do this test, they do it for the heritage pie, which is the worst reason, because it's like coffee table talk. Oh, I'm 3% this. But how valid is that information to you? How valid is it if they keep changing it? You have to understand where they come with those numbers, and you have to pair it with research to understand it.
I think I articulated it very poorly, but I guess the essence of my question, or the point that you're making, is that DNA is a tool, but for somebody starting out, not necessarily the only tool that they should be using to get going.
Absolutely.
Okay. Good. I got that cleared up. Brenda, would you like to add anything?
The other thing you mentioned was the Genealogy Federation of Long Island. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I have a feeling that also would be something that a beginner might find useful if they know a little bit of their background, but don't know even where to start.
Okay. I'm going to be the president of the Genealogy Federation of Long Island starting this month. And it's an umbrella organization over the Long Island genealogy groups. We have we're very lucky here. We have a lot of ethnic genealogy groups. We have the Irish, the German, the Italian, and the Jewish groups. And now we have DNA. And the Federation helps promote all of the groups. We have a website that lists the calendar for all the groups. We also have many libraries that put any of their genealogy type lectures up there and affiliate with us. So the Federation is all about getting the news out. And we also meet once a month and we share what we're doing. We've done a lot of transcription projects. You mentioned that you're part of the German genealogy group. Well, you know that they have one of the highest rated websites for genealogy because of all the transcription projects that we have done for records that have been locked away for years, especially with NARA and the municipal archives. We now have a death index and marriage index. You know, with the laws in New York, many of these records are not accessible, and the index is the only way that we know an event happened. So it's through all these volunteers and collaborations that we have all these free indexes on these websites, like the German and the Italian group and the Irish group. We are out, all of the groups are out searching for records that they can transcribe their members. The German genealogy group, one of the biggest and hottest topics is that we have the Brooklyn baptismal and church records that the Catholic Diocese in Brooklyn is allowing us to index. Find My Past is doing all the other Catholic and religious records except for Brooklyn. So that is something that we'll be able to offer for free on the German sites. So it's people who are interested in research and learning about their families and how do I do it? How do I get over this brick wall? Where do I look? So that we all learn through collaboration.
To clarify something, we're talking about groups that kind of focus on one ethnicity, but as you're pointing out, the German Society is transcribing records of the Catholic Diocese in Brooklyn. Yes. So somebody who is not necessarily of German descent might still find information that's definitely relative to their family history through those records, and they shouldn't point themselves only to the society of their own particular ethnicity.
Right, which is a big goal of the Federation, is to keep pointing that out to people, that you don't have to be German to go to the German meeting, especially when they're having a topic on New York City records. Most of the records that we have described are in New York City and include everybody. We've also done the naturalization records and provided indexes for all the areas of the tri-state area. So you don't have, that's why we publish a calendar. You don't have to be a member to come hear the lectures. You should spread out. You learn things. At the Jewish meeting, we learned about Irish Jews and how they interacted with people interact with each other. And the biggest hint in getting through brick walls is that you have to use what we call the fan method and search families, associates, and neighbors. And the German group, when they started out, they took the 1910 census and they put pins on the map of where everybody was located in that census from their members. Even myself, I'm not German, and everybody was in a few blocks radius in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. So we all come from the same areas and disperse because immigrants come together and they stick together. So they don't have to be the same race. We still can help each other. The Jewish group has gone across the world transcribing records. And the Mormons, they're not just transcribing Mormon records. They are pulling in everything because, especially when you're dealing with religions, people change religions. Families change religions for whatever reason. Some of it was to stay alive. Others of it because it was across the street. You don't know. Just because what your family is now, you may discover is not what they were in your ancestry tree.
You also touched on something else during the course of the discussion about DNA research and the incidences where the research might point to information that maybe people weren't expecting or prepared for. And I'm sure that's come up in your research and you've encountered people that have found that. So what do you tell people then?
Well, I tried to reiterate that many times through my lecture, is that I don't know a person who has not gotten a surprise somewhere in there. It may not be their parents, but it is people. Most of the contact I get is from adoptees who I don't know exist or how they fit in my family. And it's trying to bring humanity into all of this. When you're doing genealogy research, people get I feel like a psychiatrist some of the times, because when things come to light, and I helped one gentleman who was 84 years old who found out at a funeral that the people that raised him were not his parents, and he had 6 siblings, and he heard, oh, well, you're not their biological sibling. And he's like, well, who am I? And we found out that he was the neighbor's child, and they got deported, and they wanted their child to be raised here. But it was devastating to him.
Sure.
And how much do they want to know? Some people are not prepared. And that's why I think you should pause and think about what you want to know and what can happen when you do these tests. You know, especially among genealogists, almost all of them found out that their parents were not their parents. And, you know, maybe they always had that inkling because they don't look like anybody else, but you really have to take your time to figure out, well, what happened? And we can't judge our ancestors. We did not live in their time. We don't know why they made the decisions they made. We don't know what they faced in their lives. When we do research, we're only finding out the facts generally and where they intersected with governmental agencies. And I try to explain, how much do people know about you? How much will your descendants know about you? Where are you recorded in history? And sometimes it's the worst part of us that gets recorded. And there's so much more. And that's why you need to ask your family. And the family history and oral histories, even if they're other people, they help you understand what your family went through. But, you know, getting back to these shocking discoveries is, you know, do you want to know? There's people who do the medical test who are so afraid to open it, which is why the FDA had shut down 23andMe initially, because they were giving all of this medical results, whether or not you had the breast cancer gene, if you have the traits for Alzheimer's, and the FDA told them they're not doctors. They cannot provide this information without counseling. So they've had to hire people that can answer these questions. They've had to put more explanatory, and you have to click several authorizations before, and they say, do you really want to know before you click on this last button what the results are? I'm somebody who would rather know and then deal with it and know if I have a health issue. You know, if that's not my situation, it doesn't change who you are. There's a lot of adoptees who find out that they, you know, especially if they're Jewish, that they're not of Jewish race. And what does that change who you were? And people say, what do I do now? I go, well, you did what you did yesterday. Right. It doesn't change who you are. It's just making your family story more interesting, telling you what your family went to go through. Why did that happen? And there's lots of reasons, and you have to be willing to know the answer before you do the test.
We're all in the information business, and sometimes information without context is a problematic thing, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Susan, thank you so much for joining us today. The lecture was fascinating, and we appreciate you spending additional time talking to us here for the podcast. And with that, we will be turning the page and closing this chapter on the Syosset Library podcast. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.